My family called me a parasite at my birthday party while I was secretly paying for their entire life, so I struck back with a punishment that left them panicked and worried forever. My name's Evan. I turned 30 last week. I didn't expect much for my birthday. I'd gotten used to quiet celebrations. Just a slice of cake at my desk, maybe a movie if I wasn't too tired. Still, I thought this year might be different. I don't know why. Maybe because 30 felt big. Like maybe they'd finally see me as more than just the help. The invitation came through the family group chat 2 days before. Mom, Sunday dinner at 6 o'clock. Nothing fancy, but come by if you can. No happy birthday text, no cake emoji. Just if you can, like I might have something better to do. And maybe I did, but I went anyway. I always did. I showed up right on time. They lived in the same house I'd been paying the mortgage on since. I was 22, after Dad lost his job and Mom's hours got cut. I'd picked up side gigs, freelanced through college, and ate noodles so they didn't have to. I told myself it was temporary, just until they got back on their feet. That was 8 years ago. The house still looked the same, paint peeling near the porch, garden neglected. My little brother Jason's car, a brand new Jeep, sat in the driveway. Mom always said he needed wheels to stay motivated. I was still driving the same used Honda I bought in my junior year. The door opened before I could knock. Jason grinned and clapped me on the back, like he'd just let me into his party. Yo, about time. We already started eating. I walked into the dining room, and sure enough, everyone was halfway through their meal. My plate sat at the far end of the table, cold. Nice of you to show, Dad muttered without looking up. He reached for the potatoes and passed them straight to Jason. I sat down without a word. No one said happy birthday, not Mom, not Dad, not Jason, or my Aunt Carol, who somehow always gets invited, even though she once said I looked malnourished and underachieving. I waited, thinking maybe they were saving something for dessert, a candle, a card, something, anything. Instead, when the plates were cleared, Mom reached into her purse and handed me a small white envelope. Don't expect much, she said without a smile. You still haven't earned it. I froze. I hadn't even opened the envelope yet, but the tone was already stinging. Jason laughed from across the table. It's probably a coupon for some therapy. God knows you need it. I opened the card. It was one of those generic drugstore ones, blue and white, with a cartoon of a dog in a hat. Inside, someone had scribbled in black pen, "Happy birthday to the family leech. Maybe this year you'll grow up." There was no signature, no love, Mom and Dad, just that. My hands were still. My chest felt hollow, like someone had vacuumed out all the air. I looked up. Mom sipped her wine. Dad was picking something out of his teeth. Jason was grinning at his phone, like he hadn't just helped gut his older brother. Then Dad said, without looking at me, "Honestly, we should have cut you off years ago. You act like we owe you something." I didn't say anything. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just nodded slowly. Because in that moment, something in me snapped. Not in anger, not in pain, but in clarity. They didn't even know. They didn't know I'd been covering their car insurance for the past 3 years, that I'd been paying Mom's medical copays directly. Through the pharmacy, that I'd paid the last tax penalty so they wouldn't lose the house they now use to insult me in. They didn't know about the spreadsheet I updated every week to keep track of every cent. They didn't know because I never asked for credit, but maybe that was the problem. Dinner ended with the usual sighs, and Jason asking if I could Venmo him for the difference. On some tickets he claimed he'd fronted for a trip I never even went on. I nodded again, and said I'd take care of it because I wasn't about to ruin my own plan by blowing up too early. I got in my car and sat there for 20 minutes, just watching the porch light flicker. My fingers hovered over the ignition, but my mind was somewhere else. 8 years back, maybe, remembering. The first night I transferred money for their mortgage and told myself it was love, not obligation. That night, I opened my laptop. I didn't sleep. I just started clicking, passwords, logins, old files, bank portals, freeze here, revoke access there. I didn't rage. I didn't type in all caps. I moved like a surgeon. I didn't just pull the plug. I rewired the entire circuit. Mom's pharmacy account, disabled. Auto payments, canceled. Joint utility login, revoked. Every family Amazon account, Spotify, Netflix profile, and Uber Eats card they'd ever linked to me, gone. And I left them one last gift, one final message in the family group chat. But before I hit send, I stared at the screen for a long time, rereading what I'd typed in the family group chat draft. There was no yelling in it, no swearing, no long-winded speech about how they'd failed me or broken my heart because I realized they didn't care enough for any of that to hit them. Not really. If I wanted them to feel what I felt, shock, silence, and a slow, sinking horror, I needed to speak in their language. Money. So I kept it short, effective immediately. All payments I've made on your behalf are canceled. You called me a leech. I figured I'd stop feeding. Good luck out there. Then I hit send. No emoji, no signature, just that. I muted the chat and closed my laptop. Monday morning, I didn't get up at 6:30 like I usually did. I took the day off. I slept in, made real coffee, and went for a walk. I sat in the sun and tried to remember the last time I'd done something, anything, without checking whether Mom's copay had posted or whether Dad's cell bill had bounced again. I had space in my chest I didn't know I'd been missing. It felt like breathing air that didn't belong to someone else. By noon, I had 3 missed calls from Jason. By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the group chat went from silent to panicked. Mom, Evan, the internet's out. Can you check if you paid the bill? We can't log in. Jason, dude, why is the power off? Dad's yelling and I'm literally missing work calls. Aunt Carol somehow chiming in from Florida. This feels very petty. Evan, we've always supported you emotionally, even if we had our disagreements. I didn't respond. I just read them one by one, watching the tone shift from smug confusion to mild irritation, then panic. Then at 3:41 in the afternoon, I got a call from Dad. I let it ring. He called again, this time from Mom's phone, then again from an unknown number. I finally picked up the 4th call just to see what tone he'd use. Evan, he said, voice gruff, we need to talk. I didn't say anything. Your mother's been crying, he added, like that was supposed to guilt me into something. Still, I said nothing. I just think it's childish to pull the rug out from under your family. I mean, fine, you don't want to be part of things, that's your choice. But we had systems in place. You can't just cancel things without warning. You're right, I said finally. I should have warned you. He paused. So, you'll fix it? No, I said. I should have warned you 8 years ago when I started paying for everything. When I let you insult me in your house while living off my back. But I didn't, and that's on me. There was a long silence, then Dad muttered, You've always been so dramatic. I smiled. And you've always been entitled. Then I hung up. No screaming, no theatrics, just a quiet click. That night, I got an email alert from the mortgage server. Your account login has been updated by another user. They tried to get in. I'd already locked it, and I wasn't done yet. The next day I filed the paperwork to remove my name from every joint account I'd ever been added to. I called every company and sent every document. I even made a spreadsheet with all the account numbers I'd been linked to over the years, just to make sure I hadn't missed a single one. Then I started looking at property records because, you see, the house wasn't in their name. It was in mine. It always had been. 8 years ago, when they were too deep in debt to qualify for a mortgage, I'd bought the house under my name. I told them it was a family workaround so we could keep a roof over their heads. I let them believe it was theirs. I let them make the rules. I let them disrespect me in a house I legally owned. But I wasn't going to make that mistake anymore. 2 days later, I booked an appointment with a real estate attorney. Quiet, professional, no drama. I explained the situation, showed the deeds, the payment history, the texts. He looked at me and said, You've got every right to do this. I nodded. He leaned back in his chair and added, Do you want to evict them or sell the house outright? That was the turning point. That's when it stopped being about punishment and started being about freedom. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I opened my phone and scrolled through years of family messages, photos, passive, aggressive jokes, guilt trips, and reminders to help out because we're struggling. Then I went back to that birthday card. Maybe this year you'll grow up. I looked at the attorney, smiled, and said, Let's list it. The house hit the market a week later, quietly. No for sale sign on the lawn, no warning dropped in the group chat. Just a discreet listing through the attorney's recommended realtor. She was sharp, efficient, and not the type to ask personal questions when you said, Yes, I own the house. No, they don't know that yet. We scheduled the first walkthrough for a Tuesday afternoon. I picked a time I knew Mom would be at her weekly church volunteering shift and Dad would be out at one of his endless networking lunches that never seemed to lead to a job. Jason, as usual, was probably gaming upstairs with noise-canceling headphones on. The realtor brought in a couple and their young daughter. They were polite. The wife looked around at the kitchen and said, It has potential, doesn't it? I could hear her tone, already imagining repainting the cabinets and knocking out the ugly half-wall. The husband asked about the HVAC and the roof. I had the answers ready. I'd paid for both repairs just last year, after all. Halfway through the tour, I heard a door slam upstairs. Jason came thudding down the hallway in socks, hair unbrushed, wearing pajama pants. He looked from me to the couple and back again. What's going on?" he said, frowning. The little girl smiled and waved at him. The wife said, "Sorry, is this a bad time? We didn't realize." Jason turned to me. "Dude, why are people walking through the house?" I didn't respond right away. Instead, I looked around the living room, the same one where I'd sat countless nights during college, laptop. On my knees, trying to stretch my freelance gigs just enough to cover another month of their bills. Then I turned to Jason and said, "It's not your house, Jace. Never was." The realtor stepped in quickly, offering the couple a quick look at the backyard while I handled things. They nodded and went outside. Jason's face turned red. "Okay, what does that mean?" I raised an eyebrow. "Exactly what it sounds like. This house is under my name, legally. I've been paying the mortgage, and I've decided to sell it." He blinked once, twice, then laughed, a short, stunned kind of laugh. "You're joking." "Nope. That's not even... Like, you can't do that, dude. Mom and Dad live here." "Correct," I said. "And they've been living here rent-free while calling me a leech and handing me birthday cards with insults inside." His mouth opened, but nothing came out. He looked suddenly very, very young. "You really didn't know?" I asked. After all this time, Jason shook his head. "They always said they own the house, that they let you live here sometimes out of pity." I stared at him. "You thought I was living here out of pity?" He rubbed the back of his neck and looked away. "I mean, you never had friends over. You never brought girls around. You were always working, always stressed. Because I was paying for everything," I said, "so you could sit in your room and stream video games." He swallowed hard, like the math was starting to click. Then we heard the front door open. Mom. She came in holding a half-empty cup of iced coffee, chatting on the phone. She didn't see the realtor or the couple in the backyard yet, just me standing with Jason in the living room. "Oh, Evan, are you finally fixing the sink?" Then she noticed his expression. "What's wrong with you two?" I didn't answer. She stepped closer and narrowed her eyes. "What's going on?" Jason turned toward her, voice low. "Mom, did you know Evan owns the house?" The pause that followed felt like the universe holding its breath. Mom's face didn't twitch, not an inch. Then, slowly, she lowered her drink and said, "Jason, don't be ridiculous. We let him sign the papers because his credit score was better. That doesn't mean he owns it." I smiled. She still didn't get it. "The deed is in my name," I said calmly. "I made the down payment. I've been paying the mortgage. This isn't your house." Her face twitched then, not fear, not sadness, but rage. "You ungrateful little. How dare you try to throw your parents out of their own home," she hissed. I didn't flinch. "Mom, you threw me out first. You've been throwing me out piece by piece for years. When you laughed at my job, when you called me a disappointment in front of your friends, when you used my money and told people I was a failure." She crossed her arms. "So, this is revenge. You're evicting your family on your birthday." I laughed once dryly. "No, this isn't revenge. This is closure." Then the realtor walked back in with the couple, smiling politely. "We just love the layout," the wife said. "And the backyard's perfect. I think we'll put in an offer." Jason looked at Mom. She looked at me, and I looked at the future I should have claimed years ago. Mom didn't speak again. Not right away. She just stared at me like I was a stranger who had broken into her living room. Jason stood behind her, quiet now, his earlier cocky smirk gone. The couple was chatting with the realtor about offer terms and contingencies, as if they were talking about curtains and countertops, not the implosion of the family who still technically lived there. I stepped outside to give them space and waited near the mailbox, hands in my pockets, watching the wind ruffle the weeds in the front yard I used to mow. A minute later, the realtor joined me. "They're ready to move forward," she said. "They love the place. Good offer, above asking. They can waive the inspection if needed." I nodded. "Let's do it." She tilted her head slightly. "Are you sure you're okay with all this?" I looked at her. She wasn't being nosy, just doing her job, making sure the seller wasn't about to pull out for emotional reasons. A lot of people second-guess themselves when family is involved. But I didn't. "I've never been more sure of anything," I said. By the time I walked back inside, Mom had taken her meltdown into the kitchen, where I could hear the telltale clinking of her wineglass being filled to the rim. Jason had disappeared, probably sulking in his room or texting someone for validation. Dad still wasn't home yet, but I could already imagine his reaction when he found out what had happened. Some overdramatic speech about betrayal, maybe a fake heart issue thrown in for sympathy. He'd always been good at performative outrage. The house was weirdly quiet after the buyers left. I sat on the edge of the couch, taking it all in, every picture on the wall I'd paid to have framed, the TV I'd bought after Dad. Cracked the old one during one of his outbursts. The broken lamp in the corner from a fight Jason started last Thanksgiving. All of it sat in silence, like a museum exhibit called Things Evan Paid For, but was never allowed to touch. It was strange, not sad, not nostalgic, just strange. That night, I didn't go back to my apartment. I stayed in the guest room upstairs, the one Mom once called my pit stop whenever I needed to feel like a real adult. I lay down, stared at the ceiling, and didn't sleep, not out of stress, just clarity. I woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning to the sound of Dad yelling downstairs. "You're telling me he's selling it? You let him do this?" I didn't move. I let them stew. When I finally came down, Dad was pacing the kitchen in an undershirt, phone in hand probably, trying to call the bank or the police or some long-forgotten cousin who might be a lawyer. Mom sat at the table, pale and quiet now, like the fight had drained out of her. She looked older than she had the night before. "You want to explain what this is?" Dad barked, waving a copy of the listing the realtor had emailed him after the showing. "I think the listing speaks for itself," I said calmly. He stepped closer. "You can't just—" I raised a hand. "Before you say anything you can't walk back, you should know that everything I've done is documented. I've got every payment, every bank transfer, every utility bill, the deed, the title, the insurance, the taxes." He opened his mouth. I cut him off. "And I've already spoken with a lawyer." That shut him up. "Where are we supposed to go?" Mom finally asked, her voice small. It was the first real question anyone had asked me in years, one that didn't sound like a demand or a guilt trip. I didn't answer right away. I just looked at her. "You had 8 years," I said softly. 8 years to figure that out. 8 years of my income, my credit, my time. You could have saved, gotten jobs that lasted, treated me like a human being." She looked away. Dad slammed his mug down. "You're no better than the rest of them," he snapped, "turning your back on your family." "No," I said, standing tall. "I'm finally turning toward myself." Jason crept down the stairs behind him, looking unsure. "Wait, are you actually serious? Like, for real?" "Yes. But I live here. Not for long." He blinked, like a kid being told Santa wasn't real. "I have nowhere else to go, man." I shrugged. Neither did I when I was sleeping on couches, trying to keep the lights on in this house. But I figured it out. I walked over to the counter and grabbed the envelope that held the buyer's preliminary offer. 30 days, I said. "That's how long the closing process takes. After that, I suggest you find your own way, like I did." And with that, I left. Not forever yet, but for the moment, that was enough. I had one last move to make, and it wasn't selling the house. It was something bigger. The offer closed exactly 31 days later. I signed the final paperwork at the attorney's office with the kind of quiet, unshakable confidence I never used to have, at least not around my family. The realtor slid the check across the table, and I didn't even blink. It wasn't just a payment, it was proof that I could build something, own something, finish something without anyone else's name stapled on top of it like a participation ribbon. I didn't go back to the house that day. I didn't help them pack. I didn't check in to make sure they were okay. I'd given them nearly a decade of those things, and they'd handed me back sarcasm, silence, and debt. But I did leave one thing behind, a folder, printed, not digital. I knew Dad wouldn't open an email unless it was flagged urgent and read. Inside the folder was a document titled, "Things You Claimed I Never Did." It included a spreadsheet with every dollar I'd paid on their behalf, mortgage statements, grocery bills, health insurance premiums, credit card payoffs I'd made without telling them just to keep their accounts open, every Uber I'd ordered when Mom had her surgery, every textbook I'd bought for Jason, that he never opened, every time I'd covered an overdraft fee so their lights wouldn't get shut off. There was even a screenshot of the birthday card they gave me, labeled my thank you. I left it on the kitchen counter. That was the last time I ever saw that house, or them. Within a week of the sale, the calls started again, first from Mom, crying, then from Jason, bargaining, then from Dad, angry voicemails about family betrayal and shame. I didn't pick up. I didn't reply. Instead, I moved. I left the city quietly, changed my number, got a new bank, a new apartment, modern, quiet, full of light, paid in full. No roommates I had to raise. For the first time in my adult life, I had no debt, no secret bills to cover. No emergencies that always required my wallet but never my well-being. I didn't even realize how light my chest felt until the second week passed without a single call asking for something. I started going to therapy, real therapy, not the kind where you journal in a notebook your mom later reads by accident. I started eating better, sleeping better. I signed up for a pottery class on a whim, something I'd always wanted. to do but never had time for between double shifts and family meltdowns. And then, one day, 6 months after the sale, I got a letter. No return address, just a wrinkled envelope forwarded through my old billing address. It was from Jason. The letter started like this: "I still think you went too far, but I also get it now." He said he was living in a shared apartment across town, working part-time, cooking his own meals, paying rent for the first time in his life. He said it sucked. He also said it was the first time he understood what I must have gone through, that he hadn't. It known, that they told him I liked taking care of things, that I needed to feel useful. He closed the letter with, "I don't expect you to forgive us, but I hope someday you'll talk to me again, even if it's just to tell me I was a fool." I folded the letter and put it in a drawer, not ready to respond. Not yet, I thought, but maybe one day. Mom and Dad never wrote. I don't think they ever will, and that's fine because I'm not angry anymore. I'm not bitter. I'm free. They used to call me the family leech, but I was the lifeline. And I finally let go. Now I don't walk on eggshells. I walk on tile floors. I picked out myself in a place where no one calls me a disappointment for not buying groceries I never ate. I have peace. I have space. And on my 31st birthday, I bought myself a real card. It said, "Congratulations, you made it out." I signed it with my own name. That was enough.